One Step Ahead by Lundquist and Beslick.
Welcome to One Step Ahead Radio. One more session, another week. And as always, James is here together with me to host and give you a bit of an overview of what's going on in different parts of the world in relation to sustainability, investments, and general sort of a update from our side. What we see is happening in the world. James, welcome to One Step Ahead Radio one more time.
Hi there, Sasha. Good to be here with you again. Going to look at some interesting topics and news that have been out. Obviously, the big focus is on extreme weather and heat, and the impacts that everyone's feeling very much at the moment in climate change. Obviously, very traumatic events with the flooding in Texas last week. But I think we'll try and sort of have a bit of a perspective on what that means, where we're going, talking maybe a bit about renewables, about circularity, and what it means in terms of the cost of all of this. So we've got some interesting thoughts and current news to discuss and reflect upon.
That's fantastic, James. It's going to be a very interesting session today. So in order to start and kick this one off, I mean, Texas is known for many things. It's known for its oil sort of a legacy, but it's also one of the states in the U.S. that has most renewable energy installed, which is something that many people don't really know. But what many people don't know is that if you are hit by flooding in Texas, you may have big difficulties to reimburse your cost to your insurance company, because most of the people that have been hit by this do not have flooding insurance. And as we know from before, insurance is the big topic in the U.S. because many people are having difficulties to insure their property, real estate in relation to climate change, although we have a sitting president today who is denying any particular impact of climate change on the great states of U.S. So, James, I mean, this flooding in the U.S., it's a quite horrendous thing. I mean, there are many people have died on this, over 100, it looks like.
Yeah, more than 100 people died, and obviously there's enormous damage to property and well-being, and I think what's kind of captured. I mean, there's obviously a huge partisan debate about these kind of events in the United States, and we talked I think last week about, some people say, well, that happens, but it sparked a sort of wider debate about how ready we are in terms of early warning, because that was one of the things that caused a lot of distress, that people weren't given evacuation warnings early.
Exactly.
And that kind of connects back to what happened last year in Valencia in Spain, when that was, more than 200 people died. That was really, again, another very violent storm that happened really, really quickly. And people, lamented that there wasn't the whole thing with the text messages going to people of saying, you need to get out, you need to get away. Again, so pointing the finger again at that kind of weakness in our systems, in our early alert systems.
But that's also related
and how much governments are investing in those as well. Yeah, sorry, go.
Yeah, no. It was just sort of it's queuing into another topic, which is the dismantling of the National Meteorological Services and all the kinds of federal authorities in this space in the U.S., where the Trump administration has withdrawn resources. So these people are either made redundant or are actually not getting paid, not working. So this is very interesting because it is the direct consequence of not being able to warn people about this. And the cost, James, is enormous. I mean, according to Bloomberg that I had a look at, the cost is around between $18 to $22 billion. It's direct and indirect impact of these floodings. I mean, it's amazingly a lot of money. So the question is, how will this have, if this continues, which we can assume it will, given how the world looks like, who's going to take the bill on this one? Is it going to be a great deal by a new president again? I don't know who's going to, pay for that deal.
Yeah, absolutely. And the future ones, and above all, the prevention. In terms of getting ahead of the curve, and there's a whole debate in the US about cutting government costs and reducing what's seen as useless government jobs, like people who do weather predictions and early warning forecasts, who've been losing their jobs in the last few months, and people expect governments to have that in place because you can't kind of have any alternative, and people kind of can see the costs and the benefits of all of that. I was also looking, I thought very interesting report coming out from very authoritative group in Europe, talking about extreme weather maybe causing up to a 5% drop in Eurozone GDP over the short term. Because sometimes you have a problem with these, there's with the news flow, and people make these estimates like the numbers you've quoted, within a few days of an event happening. People kind of struggle to sort of understand what the wider economic loss is and understand it. So there was some scenario analysis done by the ECB, the European Central Bank, saying that extreme weather events, heat waves, flooding, wildfires could wipe as much as a fifth, sort of 5% of the GDP in the next 5 years. So we're not talking, which is as big as a hit as the global financial crisis or the COVID pandemic. And I thought that coming from such a group, is really quite stunning. I mean, but then you have to understand what the scenarios are. So they're talking about this being connected to disasters and policy stagnation scenario. So they're talking about heat waves, droughts, and wildfires in 2026, which would be followed by storms and floods in 2027. But looking at the headlines, even just from this week, that doesn't seem like an improbable scenario.
No, it doesn't at all.
It seems
quite. And this is just Europe, James. If you look across the Asia, I mean, the latest update on melting glaciers in Pakistan is quite worrying, because they've been melting at the accelerated pace as a result of the record-breaking summer temperature. I mean, 72 people dead, over 130 are injured during this. I mean, in this mountainous region in Pakistan, I don't know if you've ever been there, but I have, and fortunately, a long time ago. And there's a lot of mountains. It's a beautiful place from the nature point of view. This mountainous region called Gilgit-Baltistan, the temperature have risen to 48.5 degrees Celsius, which locals basically describe as unprecedented in the region, that it's more than 1,200 meters above sea level. And it's famous for its snow-capped mountains. It's just, the signals across the world are becoming so physically, obvious. And I keep asking myself, why is this not really taken seriously by, politicians and business people around the world? Because it is having significant impact on economy. And the question is, where are we going to go from here? Because if it's going to get worse every year, the question will be, what is the anticipated cost of this going forward?
Yeah, and I'd contrast. I don't have a quote to hand, but I think every press conference that Jerome Powell does, someone asks him about climate change, and he gets kind of bored of saying, "Look, I really don't care about climate change, and I'm not here. That's not on our top priorities." At a Fed level, really walking back on that. Whereas this quote from the ECB and Bundesbank board members saying in a blog this week, climate-related risks are an immediate concern for financial stability and economic growth. So it's no longer kind of out there of saying, some point in the future, they're talking about an immediate concern. So there's also a great difference, there's like there's a gulf of in the level of apparent preparedness and attention on this.
So
just between those two.
In the US, there is no problem. Climate change is manageable. The poor people
It's
will
weather,
pay.
right?
Yeah, it's weather. It's no problem. And no other parts of the world, it's something completely different. But look, I mean, there are positive things. So positive things is that China is building basically 74% of all current solar and wind projects around the world, the report says. I don't know if this is positive or negative, but it's good that it's happening. But any views on that, James?
Well, yeah, it's well known that China's dominating this market and is doing it. It's going to be interesting because China's, everyone's looking to the COP coming up in Brazil at the end of the year, and looking to how countries, and especially China, is going to frame its emissions profile and reduction target over the next decades, and expected to come up with something. So this ramping up of renewable energy is also leading a lot of people to speculate about what kind of an outlook it's going to have, but also on an industrial scale, just dominating that industry. And you just wonder, we always talk about the economics of this kind of thing, but if the rest of the world is only building 26% of all solar and wind projects at the moment, there's something to be said, about sort of a state-driven drive to, repetition, but state-driven push to have this kind of dominance in the industry. And we keep on saying to each other, well, the economics benefit solar and wind at the moment in terms of global economics, but doesn't seem to be taking off quite as much. Although we did see that solar energy in the European Union was, according to another report, was the largest source of electricity for the first time in June, overtaking nuclear and wind. And coal's contribution fell to an all-time low. And I think you'd flagged also in Poland, solar overtaking coal as well. They're big coal producer and burner there. So there is, transitions happening here as well.
But I think the signals, but I think it's signal that China sends to the rest of the world is that basically, in their view, which is very often 100 years view, the renewables are the big part of the answer, which is probably not the same view that the rest of the world has, at least if you look at the numbers. I mean, what is also one of the things that was sort of took my attention a bit was this fact that was the article addressing the huge, basically, rise in electricity rates as data centers demand the electricity in the US. And basically what the outcome of that is that US power providers are basically seeking to impose big price increases on consumers following booming data center demand. And as it looks in some of the projections, the rate of money, or amount of money that people will have to pay more for electricity, it's about $50 a month for each customer. I mean, that's a lot of money. So it's the question is, all the people that are using artificial intelligence and the data centers are increasing that use, not being really substantially renewable in big parts of the US, will of course increase emissions. It is a lot. How shall I say it? It's about signaling, and China is signaling something else than the rest of the world. The question is, are we really prepared to hear what they're trying to tell us?
And connected to that, I also saw that China is setting targets on the use of green power for more industries. So it's not just a question of having renewable energy in the grid, but they're looking to mandate manufacturers in steel, cement, and polysilicon sectors to use green power to meet between 25 and 70% of their demand for 2025 and 2026. So again, as you said, this sort of drive to renewables has implications for other sectors. You mentioned AI, you mentioned how it affects consumer bills, but also in terms of industrial policy.
Yes.
And the demand for green building, clean steel, and all of these kind of things is sort of being turned into a reality, and it's a competitive reality in terms of trade now, because people want to have sustainable cities, sustainable construction, sustainable infrastructure, and someone's got to supply that, and you have to have ample renewable resources. So there's also a very big strategic shift that you can see there.
Yes. And the thing is, in relation to this, James, I didn't know this. This was a new number for me. Only 6.9% of global materials are recycled, according to the new Circularity Gap report. That's quite little. I mean, globally, we've been talking about recycling for 25, 30 years. What is this report saying, James? What's the sort of a synthesis of this news in this new report? Yeah.
Yeah, it's kind of, I mean, I sort of picked it up because it sort of made me sit up and think and realize, because again, it's one of those things, everyone, invests in circularity and everyone's, pushing it, everyone, it's a very big topic and a lot of companies are talking about it. So only 7%, 6.9% of the 106 billion tons of materials extracted and consumed each year are recycled, according to this Circularity Gap report. And I thought what was interesting is that obviously we're going in the wrong direction, but it's basically as we're increasing our recycling, so we are doing kind of the right thing. So there was materials recycled increased by 200 million tons from 2018 to 21, but virgin material consumption rose much faster. So the thing is, sort of the problem's running away faster than we can solve it. So I think they were pointing the finger, at regulation, but also for companies having the right data to understand how they can, understand their footprint on material consumption and start to impact that. And bending the curve means not just being incremental about it anymore.
Right.
Not saying, we're recycling more. It's like, how do we reduce the consumption in the first place? So there seems to be sort of need for a kind of a step change in thinking that this report looks into and proposes ways, to sort of start thinking about material consumption the way we think about emissions. How are we actually going to have long-term sort of goals to sort of actually turn this thing around? So I thought that's interesting reflection for
very much so
for this week.
Thank you, James. And before we end, I was thinking about to bring my Japanese experience, which is very heated. I mean, has been a news out that about 10,000 people were basically hospitalized because of the heat stroke in Japan. And there are a number of them that have been basically very heavily impacted by this. And the authorities, which is very interesting, and this goes back to what we've been discussing on sort of an AI angle, but they are encouraging people to use air conditioners, which are quite a normal sort of a standard outfit in Japan. But that will, of course, increase the energy. And that goes back to the fact that Japanese are now opening up to use nuclear energy, which was a taboo after Fukushima accident. And the signals, all the things are changing very, very quickly. And the question is, James, despite all of these numbers, people dying, heat, I mean, Milano is one of the places I saw was heavily hit by heat recently, actually topping the list of the country or cities in Europe that have been affected. Let's hope, James, that these signals are getting people to wake up and ask for change, not in the long term, but actually in the short term, because we need to move much quicker than we are.
Absolutely. And we'll be here to keep track of it and discuss it week by week as those developments roll in. So interesting reflection this week in terms of awareness, action, and what can actually be done with urgency. We're talking about urgency a few years ago, but
it's now.
It is now. It's become very real.
James, many thanks for joining and hosting this One Step Ahead radio session. To all of you listening, please share with your friends, family, and people who think should listen to us. And welcome again next week for our next session. James, all the best. Thank you.
Thanks a lot, Sasha. Thank you, everybody.
Bye-bye.